Hey X-fans, it's Riley and I'm back with another episode of my X-Men Readathon. I know you're probably thinking, man, that took a while for you to get a new episode out, and yes, it has taken a while. Maybe not as long as you think it did. Some of y'all might have missed the fact that I did a couple of episodes that doubled as Omnibus of the Week videos for the Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volumes 1 and 2. Just to kind of get those in a good chunk, and it helped me because then I got a couple of Omni of the Week videos out there, so it worked out really well. So you can check out those videos. I'll have a link below to the video for the second Omnibus volume. Now, I went ahead and I read a large chunk of material because what I was trying to do was I was going to put everything from after Omnibus Volume 2 up until the cusp of Mutant Massacre into one video, but I tried to do that and the video wound up being way too long, so I decided instead I'd cut that into two halves and have everything that's going to be collected in the recently announced Omnibus Volume 3, and then everything that I believe will be in the fourth Omnibus, which is basically after Volume 3 up until the cusp of Mutant Massacre. So this video, I'm going to be talking about the material in Omnibus Volume 3. I won't be talking about New Mutants here because I have a plan for a completely separate video for New Mutants. So if you were looking forward to me talking about them, they'll get a small mention here, but you'll have to wait until my other video where I talk about them in length. Also, I am using my my laptop camera instead of setting up my camera because it's quicker, and I just kind of want to get these videos out there instead of having to set it all up and all that stuff. So once I get to, I'll say probably the Mutant Massacre video that I'm going to do and the New Mutants video, I'll have it, full 1080 HD with the good microphone sound and all that. But until then, the next two videos are going to be on this laptop camera. Anyway, so let's get on into it. Sorry for the couple minutes of lead in. Let's get on into the subject here. First, I'm gonna talk about what's in the third omnibus that has been announced. It's gonna be, right now its planned release is for mid-February, and it says online that it's gonna be a $100 book, but the editor for that volume, I think Corey Settlemyer is the editor on that one, mentioned in a forum that it was actually going to be over 1,000 pages rather than below 1,000, I think is what's listed, and it's going to be $125. It does feature an original cover from artist Jerome Opeña, who you all might know from Uncanny X-Force or Avengers or Rage of Ultron, and the variant cover is going to be a classic cover by artist Paul Smith, and fun fact, it's actually the cover that I used when I did I think the second version of my wish list for what I think should be in this volume, and I was almost completely right as far as my wish list went. So that volume is going to collect Uncanny X-Men issues 154 through 175, X-Men Annuals 6 and 7, Marvel Graphic Novel number 5, Wolverine number 1 through 4, Special Edition X-Men number 1, and Magic number 1 through 4. So I'm going to talk about all that stuff, but first I'm just going to talk only about the actual issues of the X-Men. So that material, a lot of it is collected in various other collections. I only have one of the collections that those issues are in. I have it right here, and that's the old From the Ashes paperback. This collects, I don't remember which issues, but it collects through 176. It collects about 8 to 10 issues, I think. This is the entire Paul Smith run. This is a really old and it's in bad shape, but I bought this as a reader copy, so no big deal. Yeah, this is the entire Paul Smith run, which was about 8 issues, and it does have one more issue in here than what's going to be in the omnibus, but I won't talk about that too much. But anyway, the other material before that, a lot of it is collected across 2 Masterworks volumes, I believe volumes 7 and 8 of the Uncanny X-Men Masterworks. So people have been collecting Masterworks already have this material in a nice hardcover collection. Those of us who've been collecting the Omnibus, though, we still have to wait for the nice oversized hardcover collection. Anyway, the first chunk of material that's being collected in this third omnibus has art continuing off of from the second volume. We still have Dave Cockrum on the artwork, and it's about a year worth of issues, and it's kind of one solid story arc, which is like a cosmic X-Men story, where the X-Men, they meet up again with the Shi'ar and the Starjammers, and they're fighting against a newly introduced alien group called the Brood. Of course, now we are very familiar with who the Brood are, but at the time, this is when Claremont first introduced them. Of course, the Brood, they kind of impregnate their victims, and they will turn people into Brood, is basically what they do. They're really nasty-looking insectoid aliens that have become pretty big villains, main villains that the X-Men return and fight against multiple times. But this is the first time that they fight against them, and we see them go up against, the Brood, and they meet with the Shi'ar, and like I said, the Starjammers, and we see the return of Carol Danvers during this story arc. That's one of the interesting points I wanted to bring up, because if you recall, if you read the second omnibus, we saw Carol come into contact with Rogue, as Rogue was a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants at the time, and Rogue steals her powers, which, she loses them entirely. She's no longer Captain Marvel, or at the time she was Miss Marvel, so she no longer has her Miss Marvel powers. But during this arc, the Brood story arc, we see her gain new powers, and she becomes the hero Binary. And Professor Xavier actually asks her at this point if she would like to join up with the X-Men, because he considers her to be a partner to them. And, she's like, oh, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to go off and journey up into space with the Starjammers. And she joins them and becomes a member of their crew. And speaking of the Starjammers, this is also the point where we see Chris Summers, Corsair, who's the father of Scott and Alex Summers. We see them actually become aware that Chris is their father. So that's a nice little emotional thing right there, with Scott realizing or finding out that it's his dad, and he gets kind of angry at first, and he's upset that he never had his dad, but then he's like, I should just be happy that I know him now, and all that kind of stuff. So it was a nice little scene, and from there on forth, Scott knows who his father is, and get nice interactions between the family going forward. One of my favorite scenes, though, a couple of relationships move forward during the whole Brood arc. One of them, just mentioned quickly, is that Kitty and Colossus actually kind of move forth in their relationship, and it moves forward from being just like Kitty having a crush on Colossus to Colossus actually moving forward with a romantic relationship with her. So that's really notable. That happens during this arc. I think that they share their first kiss somewhere during the Brood arc. If not, then it's a little bit later. But that was really notable, something that happened here. And the one that I really love, is that we see the beginning of Wolverine and Nightcrawler's friendship happen. Readers now know that Logan and Kurt are really good friends. And at this point, they've been working together as members of the X-Men for a good amount of time. But there's not been a lot of, camaraderie between them as friends. It's more just like, partners on this superhero team. And somewhere during the Brood arc, we see this point where Logan walks in on Kurt, and he's praying. And so Logan mentions to him, I didn't know that you were a religious person. I didn't know that that's how you were. And Kurt explains to him, yeah, I've been religious my whole life, and yada, yada, yada. He says, what about you? And Logan tells him, I don't believe in anything. I'm not religious. I don't believe in any sort of deity or anything. And then Kurt says, well, you must be very lonely then if you don't believe in anything. And then Logan's reply was, I'm not lonely because I have you. And then from that point on, it was like, boom, all of a sudden they're best friends. And it was a really, really nice, touching scene to me, because it showed a lot about how, you can have these huge differences with someone, but that doesn't mean that you can't be close friends with them. And they disagree on, religion. Nightcrawler obviously is very religious, and Wolverine says that he doesn't believe in religion and any sort of God. but that doesn't change them from being able to be really close friends. And in fact, discovering the differences between each other kind of leads towards their friendship becoming stronger. So I thought that was a really awesome scene. I don't remember exactly which issue it takes place in, but it was a really kind of a heartfelt scene for them. Moving forward from that point, there's also a few, I don't remember exactly where in sequence these issues take place, but I know that there's an issue that shows Ileana, the sister of Colossus. She gets taken into limbo by the demon Belasco, and the X-Men are like trying to rescue her. And as the events of this issue play out, we see her at the end of the issue be pulled out of limbo, but she goes from being the seven-year-old child to being a 14-year-old teenager. So, and then also she speaks English like perfectly. So the X-Men are really confused as to what happened there. That was a really good issue on its own, but it actually continues forth later on, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, into the Magic miniseries. There's also another issue here when after the X-Men get back from their, whole space adventure, they come back to the mansion and they see a bunch of kids there. They're like, who are these kids? And it turns out it's the New Mutants. So this is the first time that the X-Men meet the New Mutants. The New Mutants series at this point had already been going on for a few months, but the New Mutants themselves had not met the X-Men as of that point. So it was pretty cool because it was the first time that we see them interacting. So that's another notable issue. And this goes straight forward into Paul Smith's run, which, as I mentioned, is collected in that From the Ashes paperback. From the Ashes, obviously you can tell from the cover, deals with the Phoenix. But actually it doesn't deal with Jean Grey. It deals with the introduction of the character Madeline Pryor. And we have some stuff in here with the Morlocks and with Mastermind, so the Hellfire Club comes into play as well. Really important story arc because it actually sets forth into motion a lot of things that'll be happening with Cyclops as he kind of phases out from being a member of the team and goes on and starts to have his own life. So basically Madeline Pryor, we know who she is now. We know a lot more about her character, what she does, where she came from, as readers now in 2015, but back in the 80s when she was just introduced, there was this huge air of mystery about her because she looked exactly like Jean Grey, and Scott meets her at a family reunion where he finds out that she was working for his grandparents, and he sees her and he's like, Jean, you're dead, you've been dead for a while, what are you doing here? And he talks to her and finds out she's not Jean Grey, she's a woman named Madeline Pryor. And they form kind of a relationship, first kind of based on the fact that Scott thinks that she is Jean Grey because she mentions that she survived, she was the only survivor of this plane crash, which happened the same day that Jean had died. So Scott thinks that the Phoenix resurrected itself into a new body, and later on, Mastermind does some stuff and turns Madeline into the Phoenix. This is just a huge, I'm truncating this story arc a lot, but yeah, Mastermind turns her into the Phoenix, the X-Men fight against her a little bit, and then they break her out of that, and more or less, and Cyclops comes to the realization that she is not actually the Phoenix, and he's like, oh, okay, then we can, I'll start a relationship with you because I like you, not because I think that you're Jean Grey. And that was always kind of looming over him. She finds out eventually that she does look like Scott's former love interest, and she's kind of put off by it, but he tells her, like, no, Maddie, I do love you. I love you for who you are, not just because, or not because you remind me of Jean. And then, there was the whole, like, I'll never forget Jean, she'll always be a part of my life, and part of me will love her, but she's gone, and you're here, and yada, yada, yada. But we know how that winds up turning out, and I'll talk more specifically about that relationship and what happens with them down the line when I do my my video about X Factor and Mutant Massacre and the road to follow the mutants and stuff. But for now, I'm just talking about this, so we'll end it there. During that story arc, also, we saw Rogue join up as a member of the X-Men. She comes and confronts the X-Men, and confronts Professor Xavier, and tells them that she doesn't want to work with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants anymore, and she'd rather join up with the X-Men and kind of redeem herself. And they're all hesitant to let her join because she is, she's a bad guy at this point. So they tell, the professor, like, no, she's bad. Why would we let her join? The professor says to the X-Men, we let Wolverine join, so why not let her join? Wolverine, we know, he has killed a lot of people and does kill people when he's not working alongside the X-Men. So we can't judge her differently than we judge him, essentially, is what he says. And they say, you're right, we'll give her a chance. And she joins up with the X-Men and starts doing some good stuff in their missions during this whole, From the Ashes against Mastermind arc. So they accept her, and, they dig what she does, and she winds up joining in as part of the X-Men. So that's basically everything that happens in these issues of the Uncanny X-Men, but there are 3 different things that also take place during the ongoing series, which are collected in a few hardcovers that I've got here. The first one is going to be the God Loves, Man Kills. This is the Marvel graphic novel. It was just the graphic novel tells this story, and it's collected in this oversized not oversized, it's a premiere classic hardcover edition. This is kind of the story that I believe the second X-Men movie was based off of. It features a lot of the political intrigue and a lot of that that idea that mutants are a metaphor for civil rights. The whole mutant rights and muties and all that jazz. So if you're interested in that sort of story and seeing that political intrigue, this is the book that you'd want to look at. On top of it being a really well-written story and an interesting story as an analog to the civil rights movement at the time, it also has fantastic artwork from Brent Anderson. These these original graphic novels actually always featured really awesome artwork. So you can see that there's a lot of really nice painted artwork, and I won't go into too much detail showing that off because I'm not using a great camera right now, and whenever I do get that third omnibus, I'll be able to show off in more detail what's actually this artwork looks like, and it'll look even better on the oversized pages. But that is the first thing that happens. The second one that winds up taking place is the Wolverine miniseries. This is the 4-issue miniseries by Claremont and Miller. This is a legendary miniseries. It's actually gone down as one of the classic Wolverine stories. Very good story that spins right out of the pages of Uncanny X-Men. Basically, Wolverine reveals to the X-Men that he has business to take care of out in Canada, so he leaves, and then that spins off right into the opening pages of this story, where he actually is in Canada, and then he goes off and goes to Japan and takes care of all the stuff that we see happen. This is the book that was the basis of The Wolverine, the movie that came out more recently. And it's also where we get the I'm the best there is at what I do, and what I do is not very nice, or whatever he says there. And it's a very early example of Frank Miller's artwork. And it's very, it does look very different from what he's done later on, for Sin City and different books later on. And even for his Daredevil run, but you can tell just by the way that he uses panels and, negative space in here, and the way that the faces on his characters look, you can tell this is some early Frank Miller artwork, and it's great stuff. This is going to be some of the better looking artwork in that. Actually, that omnibus, that third omnibus, is going to feature a lot of really great artwork from Frank Miller and Paul Smith and Brent Anderson and all these different artists and stuff. So it's going to be a really nice one to see, and I just. That early Frank Miller artwork, there's a lot of really attractive stuff in there, and you can tell that that's Frank Miller. But this is a really great story, and I'm glad that they're putting it in there with the omnibus, because it does fit in there in continuity. You can slip it right in there, and it works perfectly. And I know there is an oversized hardcover collection of this that's already out, but I've never actually read it in oversized pages, so it's going to be nice for me to have those... have that in the omnibus. And then the third and the last one here, that's the miniseries that's going to be collected in that omnibus, is the Magic miniseries that I mentioned. I'm trying to pull the dust jacket off. So that's the Magic, Storm, and Illyana, where we see what happens to Illyana as she goes into limbo for those 7 years. And basically, we see her journey into Limbo and grow up and train under Storm. She trains to control her powers and stuff, and then they go up against the demon Belasco, as we see here. And she defeats Belasco, basically becomes the ruler of Limbo, and she takes on her own little demon pet, Sim, who winds up helping her out later on. And this is kind of leads into how she goes from being just Colossus's younger sister to being a member of the New Mutants, because after this story arc we wind up seeing her go off and join the New Mutants, which is really fun. She's a really great, obviously she's a really big member of the X-Men at this point, but this kind of shows how she became that person, how she started to use black magic on top of her mutant ability, which is long-range teleportation. So there's a lot of really cool artwork in here. It's a really nice little story, and it does give a lot towards Chris Claremont's run on the X-Men. So if you're reading that run, I really recommend you read that Magic miniseries. It does give a lot towards that, especially if you're going to be reading the New Mutants. So anyway, that's everything that's going to be collected in the third omnibus. That's just a quick rundown of me talking about what I enjoyed, you know, the artwork and all that stuff. I don't think I mentioned how good Paul Smith's artwork is, but in case I didn't, Paul Smith's artwork is great. The material that's in that From the Ashes story arc is amazing. It's never been an oversized hardcover before, and it's going to look incredible on those pages when the omnibus comes out, so I'm really looking forward to that. But anyway, so I'll end that video here. As I mentioned, I'll have another video coming out, hopefully really soon, where I talk about the material leading up to Mutant Massacre in what I'm hoping is going to be the entirety of the fourth omnibus. It might be a couple years before we see that, but it will be worth the wait to have all that stuff in oversized hardcover. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you are an X fan that's familiar with all these plot lines and the stories that I just talked about, please go down below and talk about what you thought about this stuff. You know, if you enjoyed these issues, if you think this was a lull in the series, what you thought about the mini-series that happened during this time, who your favorite artist was around this point, you know, if you preferred Cockrum to Paul Smith or whatever. So just leave me some nice comments down below. We can discuss the issues. I like to try and talk to people, you know, who leave me comments down below. Like and subscribe, you know, like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and check out all my other videos. Like I said, I'll have a link to the previous X-Men Readathon episode, and I'll have another one up soon. There's not going to be as big of a wait between this one and the next one as there was between this one and the previous ones. You know, check out my other videos. I have a lot of other stuff. If this is your first time seeing a video from me, I usually do reviews of omnibus volumes and haul videos where I show off the new stuff that I've been getting in the mail. So check out my other videos and all that jazz, and also check out my website, theomnibuscollector.com, and I have a Facebook group that's been a really awesome community for omnibus collectors and comic fans alike who enjoy the collected editions. I'll have links to all of that stuff down below, so you can check all that out with ease. And as always, just thank you so much for watching this video and spending time with me. I really appreciate you guys spending time, your time, watching me do what I do, because I really enjoy what I do, and I hope that you enjoy watching me do this whole thing as well. So thank you so much for, you know, using your free time to watch me do this whole thing, and I hope that you'll return and keep watching my videos. So as always, stay cool, you know, be classy, and be excellent unto each other, and I'll see you guys next time.